Okay, I think everything is ready now. Turns out OBS is updated. Now I don't have my big green block that I like to watch. Now they got all kinds of letters and numbers and stuff in the bottom that I can't read because all the text is too tiny. Okay, well, whatever. We're here. We're good. Let's go ahead and get started. Alright, hello! Shadowcat back, and with absolutely nothing specific this time. Because that's what the description tells me, and what the description tells me is what I'm going to do. So there's nothing really going on today. We are just going to have fun. We're going to relax a bit. It's 2 days before Christmas. Nothing, or we're not going to do anything too heavy today. So instead, what we're going to do is we're just going to have a little bit of a chill out session. We're going to talk a little bit. I'll take chat. We're really going to apply and see if I can get like super chats and stuff, because I don't think I can get those yet. I got to apply for that first. Another time. That'll be like a New Year's thing, I think. Maybe I can get my channel monetized for the new year, and we'll see where things go from there. But for now, we're just going to do things like this. And so today, since we don't have a particular topic, what I figure we'll do is we're just going to kind of play games, and we'll make our way through there. If other people want to talk, like in the Discord, maybe we can try that. Don't know. But we'll see what happens. And if nobody shows up for this, then whatever. I can talk into the void forever. So, for today, let's see. Where was the window that I wanted? Was it this one? It was this one. There we go. We're playing some Guild Wars. Okay. Make sure everything is working. Is it working? I don't think it's actually working. Because my OBS picture is just static. It's just sitting there. So let's see if I can fix this. Let's see if I can fix it. Maybe? Maybe not. That does not appear to be fixing it. Alright, well that's fine. I know how to fix this. We'll come over here. And we'll just grab this feed. And then I can copy this. We can come back to the stream. And paste a reference. Ah, yes, there we go. That works. See, I can figure this stuff out. Alright, and Blizz is in the chat. Hello, Blizz. Good to see you there. Okay. Knew I'd get it eventually. So, just as kind of a, how's everybody doing? How is everybody doing this morning? Oh, that's right. That's where I left off. Time to go play games.
I need ale. I need it now.
This isn't far.
Yeah, I thought about what to do today. I put up a poll to see what did everybody want to do for this weekend. And I gave 4 options. And letting the poll run on its own, I got a few options, or I got 2 responses like the day after. And so I had a tie between 2 people. And one of them said no stream this weekend, one of them said just the Sunday stream this weekend. And you know, that's fair, but that was a tie. So I threw the poll out again and I said, here, I need more answers. What else can we do? And so after throwing the poll out again, I got a 4-way tie that said, well, one person said do both streams. Don't know who that was, but one person said do both streams. One person said Saturday only. One person said Sunday only. And one person said nothing. And so with a 4-way stream, I said, well, there's only really one way to make everybody happy, and that's to just do both days. Because if I do it, and people don't show up, then they're not going to be bothered. And if I don't do it, but they do show up, then they're going to be bothered. So if I do it for both days, and people can just come and go as they please, then everyone's happy, right? At least that's my thinking. So, that's what we're going to do today. And we're going to talk about other things. We can talk about cultural things, we can talk about political things, you know, whatever you want to do. Because, like, there is stuff to talk about. Of particular interest, I was watching the news this morning, and it's been kind of fascinating watching the contest between Texas and Chicago. That's been kind of hilarious. Because Chicago, the self-proclaimed sanctuary city, is being overwhelmed right now, and they're actually passing legislation to stop Texas from sending them more and more people. And every time they do, Texas just finds a new way to get around it, which I think is hilarious. And it's interesting to watch it watch it happening, because a lot of people right now are talking about the idea of civil war in the US. And how did that disappear before I got to it? That's just wrong. But a lot of people are talking about civil war, and a lot of people think, when they hear civil war, they think of like the first American Civil War, and they think of, you know, marching armies with standing lines, you know, rifle volleys and everything else. But we're in a civil conflict right now. And if you want to look at it that way, Texas and at least Chicago, if not Illinois, are at war. It's a different kind of war, sure. But this is conflict. Texas is harming Chicago. And they're doing it by simply sending them all these people that are going to destroy Chicago's infrastructure, destroy Chicago's economy. I mean, Chicago is being wiped out. And eventually, everything that Chicago is doing is failing so far. Like, first Chicago was like, yeah, we can handle this. And then it's like, well, no, I guess we can't. We cannot handle this. And so the latest news to come out of Chicago was that they were putting a stop to all the busing that Texas was doing. They said, you know, now you have to be registered. You can only come during certain windows. You can only drop off at certain points. And yeah, you can only you have to obey by Chicago's rules if you're going to drop off migrants in Chicago. And so Texas just said, you know, fine, we'll just change the rules. Okay? We'll change the rules. If you don't want us to drive them up there, fine. We'll fly them up there. And so Chicago is now pitching a fit because they're getting planes that are landing. In addition, the buses haven't stopped. The buses are still going there. The only difference is, now the buses are not going into Chicago. The buses are now just going into the surrounding areas.
Help here? Just throw a couple snowballs at me, please. And thank you.
Don't worry, I'll throw snowballs. So, this has not changed, and eventually, sooner or later, Chicago is going to have no choice but to retaliate against Texas directly. Now, I don't know what form that takes. I don't know how they're going to do that. But what else is Chicago supposed to do?
Give him back the cheer of Winter's Day.
And I don't know. Chicago's going to have to do something. Either that or they're going to have to change their policies. But Chicago's really caught in a no-win situation. It doesn't matter what Chicago does at this point. Chicago cannot win. So, I mean, it's interesting. I'm looking forward to seeing how this turns out. I'm really hoping we get more people here.
To kill rising.
Because we could use some more people. Let's see. Anything new in the chat? No, nothing new in the chat. That's okay, though. We're here. Happy snowmen! So yeah, I thought the conflict between Texas and Chicago was amusing. It's also been interesting watching a lot of the other things like court cases across the country. The Chicago thing is really interesting right now too, with them trying to kick Trump off the ballot. I mean, it's been a matter of some debate as to whether or not we're even going to have elections next year. And exactly what that means. I mean, there are some people who think that there's not going to be elections at all.
To kill rising.
Which is ridiculous, and that would never happen. If the election was called off entirely, you would see, like, secession of states overnight. Because you would have states that would immediately say, you know what? No election, no responsibility. And so, we're done. We're not going to get any benefit from this. We're not going to have any representation. We're not going to have any participation. So, there will be an election, obviously. But the real question is, I mean, how is the election going to go? And is anybody even going to accept it? Which, you know, is not a great possibility at this moment, if there's any possibility of it at all. As it is right now, we have multiple states that are trying to pull Trump off of their ballots. Chicago already did it, although it's still tied up in court. It's tied up in the Colorado Supreme Court. It will go to the United States Supreme Court, and nothing can really be done in in Colorado until that's done. All the same, though, since Colorado opted to do that, well, now you have multiple other states saying we have precedent now. We now have carte blanche to go ahead and do basically whatever we want with the ballots. And, you know, on a certain level, that is true. These states are eligible, they are capable of running their own elections however they want. Now, it just happens to be coincidence that we all tend to run our elections in more or less the same way. We all do ballots. We count ballots. We do elections pretty much the same way. And I mean, there's only so many ways that are really practical. Like, you could change your rules to make it so everybody has to, like, whittle the name they want in wood. But it's not practical. That being said, there's never been any kind of rules, laws, whatever, on how the ballots have to be made.
And heal my friend. Face the greatest snowman ever made.
Time to defeat Freezy! Ah, and JP's in the chat. Hello, JP. In case you hadn't noticed, we're taking the day off.
Now that's a combo.
And I jumped in here on the wrong build. I should be in here on my Chronomancer. Oh well. This is fine. So, what's going to be really interesting now is when it comes to the whole ballot thing. They kick Trump off the ballot, and the immediate effect of this is going to be any state that is primarily conservative is just going to say, you know what, nope, we're not participating anymore. Now, this is why the entire idea of civil war is currently trending, like, everywhere.
Use these to heal his heart. No, I need the bitter ice. Minions, restore me.
I need some snowballs. My snowballs. So Colorado opted to kick Trump off the ballot, and even though that's tied up, California is now saying they're going to do the same thing. And if California goes ahead and does it, well, in that case, you can look forward to Oregon doing it, because Oregon, despite the fact that Oregon is like 90% conservative, Oregon is completely run by one single city. So if Portland decides that they're not going to have Trump on the ballot, then guess what? They're not going to have Trump on the ballot. Washington, pretty much the same way. The Seattle-Tacoma area, very liberal. I think what we're going to do is we're going to turn this down a little bit. There we go. That should help a bit. That was a little bit loud. So, I mean, once a lot of these states decide that they're going to kick Trump off the ballot, then what do we do from there? The fact is that when the election comes, knowing full well that Trump is not allowed to get a certain number of electoral votes, they can prevent him from becoming president. But then every single other state that did want him is just going to say, you know what? No taxation without representation. Okay? And so you'll have entire states that'll just say, you know what? No more taxation. We will prevent the IRS from operating inside of our states, and we will not comply with anything the IRS says. That means that if the IRS sends an arrest warrant after somebody, then we just won't comply. Which, you know, if you've been paying attention, that's actually kind of familiar. Because when you look at the whole immigration thing, you already have places like Chicago, which, you know, we just mentioned, like Chicago, like California, who have declared themselves to be sanctuary cities or states, saying that we will not comply with federal immigration practices. And that has not really been challenged.
I chose you.
So instead, what we'll get is places like, I don't know, Texas,
Use these to heal his heart. No.
who will say, you know what, we're going to declare ourselves a tax sanctuary. Okay? Anybody living in Texas will not have to pay federal taxes. And we will not comply. Oh, there we go. We will not comply with the IRS.
Friends, thank you for mending my heart. Sorry.
There we go. Got that done. But Texas will simply say, yeah, we're going to be a tax sanctuary. We will not deal with federal taxes. Okay? Texas doesn't need your federal dollars. We're not going to give you federal dollars. Because if you're not going to even allow us to have our candidate on the ballot, if you're not going to even allow him to be elected, then
Hooray, hooray.
we have no need to comply. And so that's how things are going to run now, if this is allowed to continue. Now, there's still time to pull it back. There is still time to fix this. It's only a matter of, will anybody fix this? Okay. Nope, not that one. I'm going to turn down my own volume a little bit. Master volume, here we go. I can adjust my master volume to there. And then I can change OBS back to where it was. There we go. That should be good. So it's going to be really interesting to see where that goes.
Law is on your side.
I should be running a karma booster too. Because I need karma. I don't have enough good karma in my life. Will this give me karma? That will not give me karma. What other boost do I have? Got celebration boosters. Let's see. Boost to magic find, rank gain. No, it doesn't boost that. Okay. Well, regardless. There's a race starting, though. I get in on that. But I mean, what do you think about the upcoming election next year in the U.S.? Where do you think it goes? What do you think is going to happen? Do you think that they'll actually manage to remove Trump from enough of the states that it's literally impossible for him to win? And if so, what do you think happens after that? Because in order to become president, you don't just need to have the most votes. I know in some places you do, but in the US, you have to have over a certain number of votes. And if nobody gets over that certain number of votes, we don't have a president. And then I believe it goes to Congress to elect the president. And Flame's in here. Hello, Flame. Yes, we are gaming today. can't see where I'm going. There's too many people here. Ow! I screwed up that turn. Come on, we can do this. Go! Here we go! I hit that wall too hard. So yeah, we're gaming today. We're chilling. We're just kind of talking about whatever happens to float my boat. And you know, whatever floats your boat too. I mean, if there's anything that you want to get off your chest, if there's anything you want to talk about, just throw it in the chat. We'll talk about it. We talked about the conflict between Chicago and Texas already, which I think is hilarious. Talked a little about Trump and the ballots, because that's topical at the moment. Flame says wunderbar. I mean, it kind of is. No! I screwed that up. But I got second place. Okay. Let's go this way next. JP says, compartmentalization. That's what floats your boat. I mean, that is true. Pity it took us losing like an entire ocean liner to realize that. I mean, that's not even entirely fair. Okay, that's not even entirely fair. Because the Titanic was compartmentalized, okay? It just wasn't sealed. But it was a huge part of the design. The Titanic did have compartments. In fact, I believe that every ship of that class had compartments. It just, they were more like buckets instead of cubes, which is what they should have been. I want a rifle. There's a rifle. And you know, we learned.
Warning! Catastrophic failure. Production levels critical.
Because I believe after the Titanic sank, we went through and changed a lot of these ships to make sure they were properly compartmentalized. This time with sealed compartments. Flame says opinions on police? Oh man, I have such mixed feelings on police. Like, on one level, we have to have police, okay? We have to. You cannot have a society without some kind of form of law enforcement. It's literally impossible. It's one of the reasons why you have all these utopian communist people who say, you know, all we need is to have people who will just, you know, live and let live and get along and everything. And it's like, well, that's fine. And I agree. That would be awesome. Except it doesn't work. Because all it takes is one person who doesn't want to follow the rules. And then if you have no defenses, if you have no police force at all, you are now absolutely defenseless against that person. So you have to have some kind of law enforcement. Now, does that mean that there are not other problems with it? Yes, there are. And it's interesting that we bring this up, and we have people who will say that, you know, all cops are just, you know, bad people. And it's like, no, they're not. All cops are not bad people. But as the old saying goes, absolute power corrupts absolutely. And that's a really bad saying, because absolute power does not corrupt absolutely. Power doesn't even really corrupt. I mean, if you take a good person and give them power, they're not just going to turn evil. What power does, though, is power enables. Which basically means that power is essentially the, it's essentially the super serum from Captain America, okay? Which, if you've never watched Captain America, at the beginning of the movie, and throughout the comics, I presume, I never actually read the comics. The doctor that made the super serum is talking to Steve Rogers before he becomes Captain America. And he explains, it's like, look, this serum is not going to make you a good person. All it does is amplify what's inside you. And so, good becomes great. Bad becomes worse. And that's essentially what we get when we talk about, like, the police. People talk about, you know, how the police are bad, and it's like, no, they were bad people before they became police. Okay, that did not change. It's just now they have the power to do more bad things. Stop shooting me. And the weird thing is, actually, I mean, this is kind of like a high-level abstract concept. Which is why a lot of people tend to struggle with it, because when we talk about, you know, absolute power and bad people who want power, a lot of people assume, they make assumptions, okay? And you know what they say about assumptions? Most people, in general, assume that people are generally good, okay? That is a lot of catapults. Most people assume that other people are generally good. And why is it that we assume that? Okay? Why? Well, the answer to that is simple. Because most of the people around us are good. And I forgot to go grab my presents. I'm too late, aren't I? Nope, I got my presents. I mean, if we look at our neighbors, I'm assuming that your neighbors are probably decent people. My neighbors are decent people. And I'm not even that much of a social person. But my neighbors are decent people. And, you know, most of the people that you work with are pretty decent people, even if you're not best friends with them. Most of the people that we see if we go out on the street are decent people, that you go to church with are decent people. Most people are decent people. And so we make this false assumption that just because everybody we know are decent people, that, you know, maybe it must be just everybody. And even though that is a fallacy, it is a logical fallacy, everyone is not a good people. It's an easy assumption to live with. But the fact of the matter is that there are bad people out there. And we know that they are. We know that there are swindlers out there. We know that there are liars out there, that there are cheats out there. And in certain circumstances, we are very, very keen to point them out. I mean, everybody knows that when you go, like, used car shopping, if you're going to buy a used car, you always take the car to, like, a mechanic. Okay? You always take the car to a mechanic. And so you can get the mechanic to say, yeah, this car actually has like a lot of frame damage on it. And you don't want this car. You really don't want this car. And so we assume that, you know, used car salesmen, untrustworthy. Just like automatically untrustworthy. Even though there's actually a lot of used car salesmen out there that are just trying to run a car lot. And so what's wrong with that? Can they not run a car lot? But because there's enough of them, well, we just kind of assume that they're no good. And then, in general, we assume that most normal people are good. But just like there are good used car salesmen, there are bad people, and they are around us every day. The reason why we see a lot of bad cops, it's the same reason why we see a lot of bad politicians. Bad people who want power over other people, who want authority, who want the ability to abuse others, they are going to seek out places where they can do just that. They want it. They're going to go and try to find it. They are going to be attracted to positions of power. And Flame says, and wow, this hurts. My neck hurts right now. Flame says, I'd like to assume that most police officers became police officers to keep their community safe. And you know what? By and large, you are right. But just as proof, let's go back to the Summer of Love, okay? Because this was a perfect example of this. We go back to the Summer of Love. Remember how we had all the Black Lives Matter riots, and you had all the defund the police movement, okay? What did people do during the defund the police movement? Did they just say, you know what? No more police, okay? Let's fire all the police officers. Let's burn down the police stations, okay? No more police of any kind. Did they do that? No, they did not do that. Sure, they wanted all the police fired. But what did they do after the police were fired? Well, they said, oh, well, I mean, we still have to have something. So instead of having, you know, police, we'll have community enforcers. And what did the community enforcers look like? It looked like those same protesters who were out in the streets demanding the police be fired. They went and got the police uniforms and the police badges and the police guns, and then they put them on. See, it was never about them getting rid of the police and living in some kind of anarchist society. That's not what they wanted. They never wanted that. They understand the need for police. They didn't want to get rid of the police. They wanted to be the police. They wanted the power. They wanted the power. They wanted the authority. They wanted, ironically enough, well, actually it's not ironically enough, it's just straightforward. What they wanted was every single complaint that they had against the police, that the police were brutal, that the police overextended their power, that they were invasive and everything else, these were all the things that they wanted to do. But they couldn't. For example, civil asset forfeiture. If you're not familiar with the term, civil asset forfeiture is a statute used by police in all 50 states, I believe, where if police find you with property, okay, and the police have reason to suspect that this property is being used for illicit reasons. Like, for example, you may have heard stories about people who get caught with, like, large amounts of cash. They get caught with perhaps several $1,000s worth of cash. And so the police, if they get pulled over and they find it, they will say, okay, number one, you are being arrested on suspicion of drug dealing. And this money, we suspect that it was either gained by or used for drugs. So we are going to take your money. Okay? We're going to take your money. And until we determine what it was for, you're not getting your money back. That is civil asset forfeiture, and it's more than just money. They can take your money, they can take your car, they can take your house, they can take anything they suspect was used for an illicit activity. And this has been a huge bone of contention, for good reason, among many people. And there's been a lot of arguments against it, but it has not been overturned in most places. But the point that I'm trying to make here is, as soon as a lot of these activists who said defund the police, remove the police, actually succeeded, and they managed to get rid of the police, they took their uniforms, they took their badges, they took their cars, they took their stations, they took everything. And then they began to patrol their own communities. And what did they do when they patrolled their own communities? They pulled people over. And they accused their own communities of, having drug money. Or they said, this vehicle is being, or is suspected of being used in like a crime somewhere. We're taking your car. And so they just started taking people's stuff. Because it was never about not wanting there to be police. It was only ever about they wanted power. They wanted to be able to do that, because under any other circumstances, that would be just straight up theft. That would be robbery. In fact, if you're carrying a gun, it's not just robbery, it's armed robbery. Guess I can't get that snowball. However, if they've got a badge, then they can do whatever they want. Which is where we come back to, how do I feel about the police and this whole situation? Ooh, there's presents over here. I've got my presents. I don't really have a problem with the police in general. But I do think that we have a policing problem. Because every single bad person out there knows that this is a quick and easy way to power. I mean, what do you have to do to become a cop? You have to go to the police academy. And what does the police academy do? They teach you the laws relevant to your area. They teach you policy and procedure. They teach you what your tools are and how to use them. And that's about it. There is no way to really gauge somebody's morality. You can't get inside their heads. You can put them through, psychological training, but the funny thing is, the people that we're talking about here, they're liars. And most of them are well-practiced liars. So you can put them through all kinds of psychological scrutiny. And they'll pass every time. Because they're liars. They'll tell you everything you want to hear. And they'll pass whatever test you need to put them through, and eventually they will get their badge, they will get their gun, and that's how we get bad cops. But the cop part was never the problem. It never was. The problem was always the person. Now, Here's where that gets a whole lot more complicated. So we've already established that when it comes to police, we don't really have bad police, we have bad people. So, how do we root out those people? Well, we actually have to hold them responsible. We have to hold them accountable. And how do we do that? Well, that means that if a cop does something wrong, then we actually have to go after that cop and hold him accountable. So let's say, let's talk about civil asset forfeiture for a second, okay? Take a break, we'll talk about civil asset forfeiture. So let's say there's a cop, okay? Now, maybe this cop has been working on a case. He's tracking down a person he suspects is a rather large distributor of, say, fentanyl, okay? And so he pulls the guy over. He's got reasonable suspicion that this guy is a fentanyl dealer. Pulls him over and says, look, I've been following you for a long time. I know what you're doing. I know you don't have any fentanyl on you because I know you just sold it. I know you have somewhere between $10,000 to $15,000 in this car right now. Okay? So get out, I'm going to search you. And so he does. Reasonable suspicion. And we can argue reasonable suspicion. That's a separate issue. But we can argue it. And so he finds, $12,000 on this guy. And he's like, I have reason to believe that this is drug money. Alright? Maybe it is, maybe it's not. Now, if we just automatically assume that the cop is in the wrong here, now we can go through and say, well, did you have any proof that this was drug money? No, we don't. We don't have any proof. Let's get some noodles. Don't have any proof that this was drug money. However, we're going to hold on to it until we can prove it, and we'll return it if we don't. Well, now we're going to, if we decide that we're not going to go with that, let's just assume that the cop is in the wrong here. We're going to say, well, you didn't have the appropriate proof that this was drug money. Therefore, instead of us treating this as a civil asset forfeiture, we're going to treat this as what it looks like on the surface. This is theft. Okay? So you took the guy's money. This is theft. Now, what about the rest of the cops? Okay, because there's a dozen cops that are out there. All of them are doing their job. They're monitoring traffic. They're writing tickets, things like that. What about the rest of them? Number one, like they say, who is going to be doing the investigation? Well, it's the police who are going to investigate themselves. Which is a problem, but who else is going to do it? And since you know that it's the police that are going to be doing the investigation, or a detective or something like that, this is where you get the always back to blue thing. This is where you find that you have the thin blue line. Because every cop knows that today, it's, my friend over there who is being investigated. Tomorrow, though, it could be me. And so, if I want to keep my job in the future, then I better help my friend out here, because today I'm sitting on his jury, tomorrow he'll be sitting on mine. And this is where we begin to see corruption inside the police. Because every cop knows that who else has got their back other than their own? They have no reason to believe that the public is going to support them. Oops. Wasn't supposed to go through there. Bam! So you know that you have police who are always going to have each other's back, no matter what. Now, add in that there's also going to be bad actors. You're going to have people, or cops, that are going to abuse this because they know that other police will just automatically have their back. Now you've given these police just basically you've given them the perfect security blanket. They know that they can get away with basically anything because the other cops will have their back because nobody else will. So now the next cop that goes out there, maybe the first cop was right and it was a proper civil asset forfeiture. But the next cop that goes out afterwards, knowing that no matter what the public says, that they'll get away with it. The next cop that goes out there just straight up robs people. Okay, he pulls a car over and just says, "Let me see your wallet." Okay? It's like, okay, here's my license. I didn't say my license. I said, give me your wallet. I can get your license out myself. Give me your wallet. And so the cop forces you to hand over your wallet and then takes all your cash and credit cards out saying that these are being forfeited. You just got robbed. And because the police have no reason to assume that anyone in the public is going to have their back, they're going to stick to their own, he's going to get away with it. Which then further erodes any public trust in the police. It further encourages other bad actors to join the police. And you begin to see how this snowballs out of control. No, that's not a pun. Okay, it is a pun now, since we're doing, Winter's Day stuff. But you begin to see how that goes. And thus, the more that trust erodes in the police, the more the corruption is allowed to sink in.
Did you need something?
It is an endless cycle, yes.
Assistance required.
So how do we fix it? I mean, obviously we can tell that just abolishing the police is not the solution.
May the Six watch over.
Because if we abolish the police, then what replaces them is going to be so much worse. The only thing that we really can do,
You seem friendly.
and the only real answer as far as I see it, is twofold. Because it has to be attacked on two fronts. Number one. Oh, and I just crashed into a whole bunch of books. Number one is we have to start trusting the police again. And that's hard. Because how and why would we trust anyone? Oh, and I missed the race. Oh well. I mean, the police don't really give us a whole lot of reason to trust them. So why would we? But the fact is, we're gonna have to. At the same time, however, we're gonna have to, or they're gonna have to start doing their job and removing their own. And that means that the police are gonna have to draw a hard line and go after their own people. Now, what incentive do they have to do so?
Your attention, please.
Because if they start going after their own, then sooner or later, they're going to be on the chopping block too. So we know that the police are going to have to start policing their own. We know that the public is going to have to trust them more than they already do. And we need reforms. Now, what those reforms are going to take, I don't know. because we do need to have certain protections for officers. Because we talk about things like qualified immunity. Qualified immunity is basically the ability for the police to break the law in service of the law. This allows police to go in and, like, go through somebody's house. Oh, that guy's a friend. Come back here. Got him. Unfortunately, they got me. So we're going to need to have some kind of reforms. I just don't know what those reforms are going to take the form of, because we need to have, or for the police to be able to do their job without fearing for their job. And this is what makes it just so very complex. There are so many things that need to fall into place to make policing what we want it to be, that there's really no way to force it. The interesting thing is, when we talk about policing, I think we have to go back to the words of Thomas Jefferson. And one of the things that Thomas Jefferson said is the United States, the Constitution and the democracy that we have, is only suited for a moral people. I don't even know what all my abilities are. Why are you invisible? Ah, they got me. So one of the things that Thomas Jefferson said is that the United States Constitution was only suitable for a moral people. And the reason why he said that is because it was a parchment that declared everything that the government could not do, rather than proscribing what you could do. You were supposed to have the freedom to do and live however you wanted to live, so long as you were not infringing upon other people. And because of the way it worked, I mean, if you were not a good actor, it also gave you the freedom to not be a good actor. The reason this worked, however... I should really have a shield while I'm doing this. There we go. But the reason why it worked is because we had a much more harmonious society back then. We had a much more moral and unified society. Oh, I almost have caught the end of the match. As long as you had a unified society and people were willing to act together.
Attention participants. Your recreational activity will commence.
Honestly, the rules didn't matter. See, the funny thing about that is, when we talk about the Constitution, we talk about laws, and then we talk about things like the police who have to enforce those laws. The idea was never that these things should be just... They shouldn't have to be enforced. It's very interesting because I heard the same argument made about abortion. The idea that abortion should not be illegal. Abortion should be unconscionable. I mean, it should not even enter into people's thoughts that, you know, this should be an option. Bonk. I'm gonna knock you down. Ah, he knocked me down, though. So we had this idea that, you know, these laws, they shouldn't even cross into your mind, and we should only ever need to have police if somebody actually does go far enough to break them, and then we simply put them away. Essentially, we were built on a zero-tolerance society. Let's try something different. Let's go with the heavy gunner. Maybe not. What do we got here? Oh, I guess heavy gunner. Oh, wait. Draw a rifle. Here we go. He's got the defensive bubble. So when we look at the police, honestly, the police should have something similar to like a zero-tolerance policy, where if you break the rules, then you go to jail. However, this also does just encourage people to not rat on each other. We go back to the thin blue line. The fact that if you want... if you want to keep your job, then you help the people who break their laws keep their job. But what other options are there? Okay, they're gone. Sorry, this might not have been the best thing to do while we're trying to have a complicated discussion on policing. But again, this kind of comes back to, I guess, the whole cultural issue. Like I said before, when referring to Thomas Jefferson, we should be in a society where people don't want to do these things. But unfortunately, that's not where we live right now. Okay, I don't like being a heavy gunner. Go back to being a supporter. So if we understand that this is really a cultural issue at heart, then how do we fix it? And that's the harder part, because once upon a time, we had much more unified cultures. And we were centered around things like the church. Not only was the church a gathering place for most people, why are you so strong? How is he so strong? Well, that's embarrassing. So, back when we were all more focused on the church and the community, we had more connections, we had more unified direction. And the fact was that when they talked about how... Wow, we just got absolutely annihilated. Okay, I'm not doing this anymore. I'm bad at this. When we talk about how things should never have been illegal, they should have been unconscionable, the fact was that when you knew who your neighbor was... We're going to go back to the whole neighbor thing.
Your attention,
You
please.
wouldn't want to do anything to your neighbor, because, like, if you do something to your neighbor, number one, you gotta live with that. Can you really live with being the guy who stole something from your neighbor? Or who did something to your neighbor? Is that really who you want to be? And then there was the fact that, you know, if everybody in town knows each other and everybody has common, you know, direction and purpose, everybody is eventually going to find out what you did. And then you won't need policing because you'll simply have community action. I mean, do you want to be the one who's not welcome at the next barbecue, okay? Are you going to be like, everyone in your block is invited to the next block party, except you. You're not allowed to come. Why? Because we know you're a bad person. Because we know what you did to your neighbors, we know what you've done to people, and you're just not welcome anymore. We don't want you. And that's how it used to be. That was what kept people in line, is if you were not in line with your community, you would simply not be welcome in it. Which, if you followed my lectures before, you may recognize this as being basically the way cancel culture works. The only difference being that in cancel culture, they usually try to drive you out of the community. Whereas what I'm talking about is simply not welcoming you in the community. There's a difference. One of them is by force, one of them is much more passive. But that was how we did it. And so we kind of need to get back to that. We need to have a more unified community. And how do we do that? Well, that is sorta, kinda out of our control. I mean, you can control it to a certain degree by deciding where you want to live. What part of community you want to be in. Move to a place that shares your values, join clubs that share your values, find people like yourself, and, you know, live there. That also means that once you have a community with a common goal and direction, you have a community that knows each other, trusts each other, then it kind of takes care of your policing problem on its own. Because when your police are part of your community as well,
Not much time for talking.
your problems are just gone. It reminds me of during the COVID lockdowns in New York, when the mayor of New York wanted to shut down all the churches and synagogues. Not the mosques. Didn't want to shut down the mosques, but that's because he knew how that would turn out. But he wanted to shut down all the churches and synagogues. And when he shut down the synagogues, the Jews said, okay, we're still going. So when shutting down the synagogues didn't work, he sent work crews from the city out to actually weld the gates shut around Jewish synagogues and Jewish parks.
Hooray! It's Winter's Day!
Ooh, there's the Mount Race. And when they sent the work crews out to weld shut these synagogues and parks, the Jews, not to be deterred, simply brought in equipment and cut their way back in. At which point, the mayor of New York had no choice but to call in the police. And what happened when he called in the police? The police said no. And why did the police say no? Because the police said, look, we live here. These are our neighbors. No, we're not going to go through and enforce this. So the New York mayor had no choice but to then call in the state police, who did not live in the area, who had no connection to the people there, and who would do whatever they were ordered to do. And they did it. The same thing was true with the, what was it called? The Atlas Gym in, I think it was New Jersey, where they said they were going to stay open during COVID, and the governor there had to call in the state police because the local police wouldn't do anything. But again, now we go back to the cultural problem. Okay, we understand that having the police that's part of your community, I mean, the police are not going to abuse the community that they are a part of. So now we go back even further. If the police are no longer the problem, now it's whoever's giving the orders that's the problem. Now we get back to the mayor or the governor, because now they are acting against your community. And why is the mayor or the governor going after you? And the reason, of course, is because the mayor or the governor does not reflect your community. And why is that? I mean, obviously, you... Well, maybe you personally didn't vote for them, but the mayor or the governor is supposed to represent either your city or your state. And obviously, they're not right now. There we go, that was a good turn. So it keeps coming back to community and common culture. No, you know, if you don't have the united culture, if you don't have a united community, then what do you have? Flame says the unified neighborhood vibe community would do it. I mean, kinda, yeah. And maybe this is not something that can be solved so easily. I mean, maybe things like states and populations are just too big. Maybe having a mayor for a place like New York City is just too much. Maybe New York City should be divided up into different areas. Maybe that one person just has too much control, or the people don't have enough representation. Or in places like, you know, New Jersey, where it was the governor calling in, maybe the governor is simply the governor of too many people and he doesn't adequately represent them. Or, alternately, maybe they're just bad people. And in this case, I would argue they are. I maintain to this day that, what was his name? Cuomo in New York is a mass murderer. When he ordered to have COVID patients moved into nursing homes, knowing full well that the elderly were the highest risk when it came to COVID. The tens of thousands of people who died because of that were directly the result of his actions. And more people are still coming around to that to this day, understanding that he had options. He could have put those people anywhere. Nursing homes were not a necessity. But as I pointed out, what happened afterwards? Well, when it comes to things like public services, when it comes to things like medical, when it comes to things like welfare, the largest draw on welfare benefits and medical services are the elderly. I would love to see what the welfare numbers and the medical services numbers were in New York City pre-COVID and post-COVID. Because I'm pretty sure that if you looked at that on a graph, you would see a giant cliff going down. And then suddenly his choices make a lot more sense. But that's just my little conspiracy theory there.
It's Winter's Day.
So at the end of the day, it does come down to community. You need to have people who are part of your community to represent you. You need to have people who are part of your community to, protect you. You just need to have people in your community in general. And that's the entire problem with policing. We have people in police who don't care about your community. They don't. They don't care about your community. They don't care about you. They have no common culture with you. They have no common cause with you. They have no common virtues or morals with you. And so they really don't care what happens to you. So if you want to look at policing and you want to fix policing, bad policing is a symptom of bad people. Bad people are a symptom of no common culture. Most of the time. There are some people who are just irredeemable. And I mean, it sucks to say that because when I talk about people who just struggle with the idea of bad people in general, this is what I'm talking about. I mean, everybody knows that there are bad people out there. Everybody knows that there are, murderers out there. There are robbers out there. There are people who do assaults and things like that. There are bad people out there who do bad things. There are also people who are less bad, but still bad people, who only don't do, the bad things because they don't want to get caught. And so, they don't do it. But if they were given the chance, well, now it's a different story. Tuck says everyone knows there's bad people out there, and they're all in this chat. Well, I mean, speak for yourself. Okay, that's a lie. I'm a bad people too. Actually, I'm a lot better than I used to be. But I mean, I've done bad things in my life. I've done things that I regret. All in all, though, that's how we fix it. That's my thoughts on police. That's how we do this. That's how we make it better. And I just don't know what else to say on that. That's a long tangent, a long way to go about it, but I don't think that we need to remove police.
He's just wounded.
I don't think that we need to, I don't know, change the police. I think the idea is fine. I think that the way the police are set up right now is fine. I don't think any problems that we have with police right now are with police. We have problems with people. And those problems with people are not going to be fixed anytime soon, and they're not going to be fixed very easily. Mostly because we're going to have to make some very difficult choices. We're going to have to do some very unpleasant things in the process. Things like telling people no.
Eat my dust.
Which is a word that we have become very unaccustomed to in modern culture. We don't like to tell people no anymore. I was watching the Lotus Eaters this morning. I don't know if you're familiar with the Lotus Eaters or not, but the Lotus Eaters are a socio-cultural commentary channel out of England. And they were talking about the brand new Southwest Airlines policies, where people of size now get free seats on airlines. All you have to do is go up to the ticket counter when you're flying with Southwestern or Southeastern. Now I don't remember what it is. It's South something. But you go up to the counter and tell them that you are an overweight individual, you are a person of size, and that you need an additional seat, and they will give you your additional seat. And that means that you may, or they may have to bump somebody on the flight to give you your extra seat, because if you're in like a 3-seat row and you need 2 seats, somebody else is going to have to stay behind. Now, this story is not new. People have been talking about it all week, last couple of weeks, I think. It's not new, but it is still very controversial, and it's very controversial because how is this fair to other people? I mean, how is this fair to the people who get their flights bumped because somebody else needs a second seat? And the real issue here is, like I said, telling people no. Because at the end of the day, that's what we have a failure of. Nobody told these people no. These overweight individuals, nobody was there to say, no, you can't have more food. Nobody was there to say, no, you have to change your lifestyle. And now, when we get to the airline itself, we're again saying, we can't fit you in the normal seats, but we're also not going to tell you, no, you can't fly. Even though that would be the appropriate response here. It's like, if you cannot fit in the seat, number one, you can buy an additional seat, or number two, we just say no. However, we have a problem with saying no in this country. And the reason why we have a problem with saying no in this country is historical. The reason why we have a problem saying no... Oh, there we go. Freezy's done.
Friends, thank you for mending my heart. Sorry.
The reason we have a problem saying no in this country right now is because of our history with slavery and women. Or not just slave... Well, okay, I'm going to call it slavery, actually. But slavery and women. And the reason is this. After slavery was ended, after the Proclamation of Emancipation, after the Civil War was over, the 14th Amendment was signed. No, 13th Amendment was signed. After all of that was done, slavery was outlawed, and every state was forced to free its slaves. Now, just because slaves were freed, that did not mean that the situation for those slaves was ended. Because all of the slaves were now freed, yes. At the same time, however, if any of those slaves wanted to get a job, they would go and they would ask somebody, and that person would say, no, we're not taking anybody like you. Let's go to the bell choir. I haven't done that yet. And if women wanted to go work, they would simply be told, no, we don't want women there. And this continued for a very long time. Got to remember that the Civil War ended in the mid-1800s. The Civil Rights Act wasn't signed until the mid-1900s. So this continued for a long time where people would just be told, no, you can't live here, you can't work here, you can't eat here. And so the word no became associated with discrimination. I gotta focus on this. There we go. I make that look easy. So the word no became associated with discrimination. You can't tell people no, because then, I mean, why are you telling them no? Are you telling them no because they're black? Are you telling them no because they're a woman? Are you discriminating them in some way? Are you being a bigot? And so we associated the word no with racism, with misogyny, with bigotry, with religious intolerance. We've associated no with all of those things, and now no has become a bad word. Very good. And so now we end up in the place that we are with, like, the airlines. Where we have people that want to get on the airlines, you know, people who don't fit in a seat, and we can't tell them no because now it's discrimination. I hate this song. I can't even find the downbeat on this song to know when everything is in time. Ah, that was bad. By the way, I never mentioned I miss Rock Band. Alright, last song. Well, that was fun. And I have presents! Lots and lots and lots of presents. So yeah, the entire Southwest Airlines thing, it is the culmination of our society, our culture's reluctance to tell people no, even when they need to. By the way, we've seen this not just, when it comes to airlines and such, but if you look at any kind of modern parenting advice, and I'm not a parent, not yet anyway, but I still pay attention to some of this stuff, and you see a lot of this new parenting stuff that's coming out, where they say, no is a bad word. Never tell your children no. They say the average child will hear the word no like 76,000 times before they're at the age of 10. And so you should never do that. You should always try to have a conversation with your child. Do these things. Have a conversation, try to negotiate, try to understand where your child is coming from. It's like, I get what you're saying, but sometimes the appropriate answer is just no. Sometimes it's just that easy. Sometimes the answer to a question or the answer to a situation is just no. And this does all tie back to everything that we were saying before about policing. Sometimes the answer is just no. When it comes to somebody complaining about, the whole civil asset forfeiture thing, it's like, we can discuss this, but the answer to what you think we're going to do about it, nothing. The answer is no. Okay, we're not entertaining this conversation right now. And maybe we can bring up a different forum to discuss it in later. When it comes to the idea of defunding the police and saying, yes, there have been issues in policing, the answer to this is, no. We're not going to just defund the police. The answer is no. We need to learn how to tell people no. And that no is not discriminatory. It's not racist. It's not misogynistic. It's not bigoted. No is a word. And some people need to be told no. When somebody comes up and says, I want this officer, or I want this police department, the entire police department removed, the answer is no. And if those people then say, fine, then we're going to riot and burn down downtown, the answer is then no. And if you try, we will stop you. And then, when those people say, fine, if you won't let us burn down downtown, you won't defund the police, I have an idea, we'll just become police. No. The answer is no. It's like, well, you can't stop us from becoming a police. It's like, yes, I can. The answer is no. It's like, well, that's discriminatory. You can't stop us from doing that. It's like, I don't care. Obviously, you are doing this for ill gains. Obviously, you're doing this for an ill-formed purpose. The answer is no. And yes, maybe it goes to court, but again, here's where community comes in again. You tell people like this, no, they can't do it, and they say, fine, I will sue you then. Well, if you're going to sue them in this community, perhaps you should be expecting an answer that is in line with everything that just happened. So you get one of these like BLM activists who says, fine, I will become a police officer and I will change the system from the inside. You say no. Then they say, fine, I'll see you in court. I'm going to sue you. So you take him to court. And then in court you argue and say, look, this person was responsible for several defund the police movements. They have been involved in several different riots and protests across the city. They have been involved with the following events that have caused several thousands to tens of thousands of dollars in damages. And now they want to become a police officer. We believe firmly that this person has ill intent. and thus we are denying their application to become a police officer. For the safety of our officers, for the safety of our community, we say no. And just like that, you have stopped a bad actor from getting in. We need to learn how to say no again. No, it is not acceptable. No, it is not tolerable. No, we are not going to accommodate you. Like, there are certain things that should be accommodated. Like, when it comes to things like, disabilities and such. I know there's people that will complain about things like the Americans with Disabilities Act, saying that, oh, well, if you're going to have a store, then you have to, make it ADA compliant. Which means that you're going to have to go through and renovate things. Well, I don't want to renovate, because it's very expensive. It's like, don't care. Don't care that it's more expensive. You need to make sure that you have things like ramps for wheelchairs, and that your aisles are a certain width apart so that people can get down them. You need to be compliant. And that's understandable. But that's also not the same thing. Not being ADA compliant would be discriminatory. Telling somebody who wants to destroy the police no when they say, I want to be a police officer, is not discriminatory. It's not. So that's how we're going to fix that. That, and like I said, community. It all comes back down to community and culture. Because you're going to need the community to enforce saying no to certain people, to certain ideas. Now, what does this mean? Does this mean that we're not going to have any more issues? No, of course we're going to have more issues with this. Does it mean that we're going to see things like racism again? Well, yes. However, racial discrimination is already illegal. So we've already kind of covered that one. What we're talking about is not denying somebody based on race. We're talking about denying somebody based on their ideology. And you may say, well, isn't that just another form of discrimination? It kind of is. It kind of is.
I'm not sure about this.
But at the same time, it's a necessary form of discrimination. And I hate to put it like that, but it is true. It is a necessary form of discrimination. Because if you have people who just want to hurt other people, well, we already have laws against that. Like, we have laws against, say, assault and battery. Okay, you're not allowed to hit people. But what if you wanted to make, or, pass a law that says, well, it's okay to hit people now? Well, we might just say, no, you're not allowed to do that. You're not allowed to pass a law that allows you to inflict bodily injury on other people. So you say, you know what, I'm going to get together an entire group, okay, and we're going to form a coalition, we're going to take over the government, and we're going to allow violent crimes. You are, I believe, fully justified in saying, you know what, I've seen the application for your coalition for the advocates of bodily injury, and we're denying it, okay? Outright. We decline. I mean, after all, this is what community is for, is to protect its own. See, it's very interesting because we're talking about very small-scale issues here. We're talking about community and neighborhood issues, sometimes getting up as high as city sometimes state. But these are all still very small-scale issues. One of the things that I've been talking a lot about on national issues has been the idea that, in the US at least, and I suspect in other parts of the Western world, what was I going to say? I lost my train. Tux, you ruined my train of thought. Oh, that's right. I remember what I was going to say now. You have groups like the Democrats in the U.S. and other groups in other parts of the world that keep calling the right fascist. Okay? Like, there was a news article, I think it was CNN, came out just the other day and called Trump the literal reincarnation of Hitler. And they know what they're doing when they phrase it like that. They know exactly what they're doing. But they call him Hitler, they call the conservatives fascist and everything else. The unfortunate thing is, for them, they're gonna get their wish. For a long time, I held the view that I am absolutely free speech, okay? I am like 100% unfettered free speech. I believe in unrestricted speech. With a single caveat. And this is becoming more and more popular now. I only believe in free speech for people who believe in free speech. I believe that anybody who advocates for speech to be taken away from other people should not enjoy free speech. That means that I am actually all for removing free speech from anybody who signs in, say, hate speech laws. If you don't believe in it, you shouldn't have it. This is kind of my approach to everything. In fact, some people might even call this the golden rule. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you.
I saw this hunter who had a doggy.
Right now, we are in a position where we are continuously trying to extend all the rights and privileges to people who want to remove those rights and privileges from others. Again, this is where we get into culture. This is where we get into things like the policing, where you have police who are unwilling to enforce the law for some people, but they will enforce the law for others. Or they will simply break the law themselves because it benefits themselves in the moment. And I have been saying for a while, and people are starting to catch on, that the answer to this is going to be fascism. Funnily enough, the way that people on the left keep abusing things like the freedom of speech or freedom of assembly or things like that, they're actually going to create the fascist state that they keep warning against. And I wonder sometimes if maybe this is the goal. Because sooner or later, in order to fight back, knowing full well that these people will exploit any right and privilege they have, the end result will end up being they will have their rights and privileges removed. And so we will end up having people on the left who go out and maybe they get a riot, or they participate in an assembly, you know, lawful assembly, that then turns into a riot. And then, in response to the riot, the police come, crack down, and mass arrest everybody in the riot. Again, this is a thing that happens.
Warning. Unauthorized interaction with caravan. Attempting distraction.
Welcome.
Bam! Bye-bye, Scrit. So the police mass arrest everybody who's in a violent riot after an assembly. And then what do? Well, if it was, say, you know, some kind of anti-free speech thing or anti-religion or whatever it is, if basically this is an entire riot about violating somebody else's rights, we simply say, you know what? You're stripped of your citizenship. Okay? You no longer enjoy these rights. This also means that you no longer have firearm privileges, you no longer have voting privileges, you no longer have any of the privileges. You are no longer a citizen, you are a resident. You are a civilian, to go with like Starship Troopers. Okay, you are a civilian, not a citizen. You enjoy all the protections of the country, but you enjoy none of the privileges of the country anymore. At which point, we are now bordering on, if not dipping into, a fascist country. However, I mean, it's going to be the logical extension of just trying to maintain the country as it is. How is it you're going to protect free speech from people who don't want you to have free speech? You take away theirs. A really, really good case to be made right now is part of the First Amendment is the freedom of religion. And what are we seeing on college campuses across the country right now? We are seeing people who are targeting Jewish students and staff members. They're targeting them for harassment. They are targeting them for violence. How many cases have we heard of Jewish students being pinned into closets, into cafeterias, into libraries, anywhere that they can find safety? The only result of this is going to be that these people who are targeting Jews, specifically because of their Jewish faith or their Jewish ancestry, is going to be to target the people that are harassing them and say, look, you had the right to peacefully assemble. You misused the right to peacefully assemble. And now you will no longer have the right to peacefully assemble. It'll be that simple.
Are you well?
I thought I could heal the Doliac.
Twitter stay spirit elevated. Community service duration decreasing.
And of course, you know, when this happens, we will have people that are screaming fascism. They will be screaming it's the Fourth Reich rising in the United States. It'll be just the end of times. It'll be World War IV. Okay? What happened to World War III? I don't know. We're into World War IV now. Okay? We need everybody to invade the U.S. We need to be saved from the new fascist totalitarian United States government.
If you say so.
But at the same time, if we were to give these people unfettered power, what would they do? These people that are already protesting against Jewish students in college campuses, if they were given the power to, they would evict students from college campuses if they were Jewish. I mean, these people are already trying to drive them off the campuses as is. If they had the power to call in the police and have them removed by force, they would. Now, imagine if any of these people became police officers. Let's say that they decided, fine, if I can't get the police to do it, I will instead become a police officer. Okay? Then I can walk back onto the college campus with my badge and my gun, and I can go up to all these Jewish students and say, look, I've had a report that you did something. I don't know what you did, but I had a report, so we're going to have to investigate. All right? And then they can say, I have reason to believe that you may have drugs inside of your dorm. I need to come into your dorm. And then they go into their dorm room and trash it. Okay? Absolutely just destroy their dorm room. Toss everything off the shelves, off the desks, pull out drawers, break doors, whatever it takes. Just absolutely destroy their living area. Why? Oh, well, I had suspicion that there was, maybe something in here. And sure, maybe you can argue it in court, but again, we go back to the thin blue line. They'll be backed up by other police officers because, you never know when it's going to be you on the line. And so we can tell how one bad actor gets into a position of power. Why? Because they were already a bad person. They just wanted power. And we come back to saying no. We say, look, you were a part of this anti-Jewish protest, riot, whatever you want to call it. All right? Obviously, you have racist intentions, racist tendencies, whatever you want to call it. You are not a person who should be trusted with power of any kind. No, your application to be a police officer is denied. No is all it takes. You begin to see how all of this fits together like one giant puzzle. Every single piece of this problem hooks into another one. It creates one giant link, one chain of pieces, one giant picture. And that picture is community. That picture is culture. You cannot have your culture if you have only one piece of it. You can't have the culture or the community if you only have a couple of pieces of it. You need all of them. You need all the pieces put together in order, and once they are, well, in general, once all the pieces are together, what you have is not only something that looks nice and feels nice, but it's usually very strong too. And anybody who's done a jigsaw puzzle knows that once you put the puzzle together, it usually stays together pretty well. So that's how we fix it. That's how we fix the policing thing. That's how we fix the community thing. That's how we fix a lot of the issues in our society. Like, I talked about Southwest Airlines and what they're doing with their passengers of size or people of size on the airlines. But think of how many other times in your life you've seen people who abuse rules and policies just because they can. A really, really good example is anybody who's ever worked retail. How many people in the chat right now have ever worked retail? I've worked retail before. I know some of you have worked retail. Some of you still are working retail. I'm not going to name names, but I know who's worked retail and who hasn't. You know how that whole saying about the customer is always right? How many times has the customer actually been right? The idea of the customer always being right is, was, and always will be about placation. The idea being that we are going to err on the side of the customer because we don't want to lose their business and we don't want to start a scene. It is almost never because the customer is actually right. It's because we're just going to err in their favor by default. And what have we seen? We have seen that be abused to the point of literal parody. I mean, anybody who's been on the internet knows the Karen meme, where you have the woman with the bob haircut, and she walks into the store and she demands the manager because she demands that everything in the store be suited to her. Everything needs to be where she wants it. Everything needs to be the price that she wants it to be, because the customer is always right, and she's the customer. When the appropriate answer here is no. I mean, no is a powerful word. And it's one that we need to start exercising more often. Ah, and I'm doing terribly here. Hold on, I can still save this. Time to go. Ah, that was a good turn. That was a good turn, too. Slide. I've got a need for speed. Wow. And somebody's already done. And I thought I was doing well. They were so fast. How'd they even manage that?
What's going on?
That was impressive. Alright, well, we've been here for a couple of hours now. We had a good conversation about police. Didn't actually expect that. Let me just double check the chat, see what I've missed. Because I actually missed a lot of things. Let's see. JP had suggested a good 80s band. I don't know about band, but if you're going for 80s, I think you really can't get much better than Billy Idol. So if you're still here, JP, Billy Idol's the way to go. You cannot go wrong. Blizzard Star says something festive. My thoughts on fruitcake. I don't know. I've never actually had a fruitcake before. No, really, I've never had fruitcake before. I've heard about fruitcake, and I've heard all the jokes about fruitcake, like the fruitcake brick that you keep in the top shelf of your closet. You know, the one that's been there for like 17 years. You know, something that even the cockroaches won't touch. I've heard of that before, but I've never actually had fruitcake before. I should probably have some at some point in my life. Let's see. Flame, I read that before. Let's see. Tux said, I mean, basically that. In a moral society, people are offended by both police losing their mind and by police being attacked. And you wouldn't have to explain which is which. I mean, that is true. And the will of the people be done. If the people say that the police are being immoral, then the police are being immoral. And if the police are committing crimes and the community points out that the police are committing crimes, then there you go. There's not a whole lot of wiggle room here. The police are the extension of the community. Let's see. Tux also said the problem is those groups tend to name themselves nice things, like BLM. Yes. Like the Association of Puppies that is dedicated to kicking puppies. It's like, who doesn't love the Association of Puppies? Okay, why would you ever vote against the Association of Puppies? Who cares that they spend their time kicking puppies? It's the Association of Puppies, and you don't hate puppies, do you? It's like the only time that ever failed was when somebody tried to open a bar, you know, like one of those bars with the dance floor and everything, and they called it the Seal Club. Nobody bought that for a minute. Alright, so we're going to wrap things up. I'm going to open my presents on here. How many do I have? I have 246 of them. That's a bell choir case. Alright, let's open them up. What did I get?
You can never have
Something good? Something valuable? No, not really. I've got 70 glasses of buttered spirits. I'm gonna drink them. I've got 79 mugs of eggnog. I'm gonna drink them. I got 60 cups of spiced apple cider. I'm gonna drink them. And look at that, not affected at all. Winter's Day weapon chest, Ryan Verdant. Fun stuff. Yeah, I just drank like over 200 drinks. And I'm fine. I have an iron liver. Alright, let's see. Tux, who was the last one, says, what is the meaning of life? The meaning of life is life. Which I'm sure is not the answer you wanted. But it's true. The meaning of life is life. Seriously, that's it. That's all there is to it. The purpose of life, no matter what the animal it is to continue life. That is why every single creature on this planet shares the same basic life strategy. Be born, grow up, make more of yourself before you die. Single-celled creatures do it. Multi-celled insects do it. Rodents do it. Birds do it. People do it. The purpose of life is life. Now, what you do with it is up to you. But the purpose of life is not that complicated. You can dedicate your life to something, but that doesn't change what the purpose of it was in the first place. So, there you go. That is my sage advice. Make of it what you will. Alright, well, I'm going to go ahead and we're going to take a break here. This was fun. Maybe we should do more chill streams like this in the future. I don't know what we're doing next week. I'm going to put up another poll. Okay, I'm going to put up another poll, okay? And I'm going to ask about next weekend. And if I get another 4 answers and another 4-way split, I'm going to redo the poll this time, and I'm going to start taking answers away. Because that's what you're going to get if you're going to do it that way. So, next weekend, I don't know what we're doing. I'm going to put the poll up. Whatever happens, happens. I can't make any promises. But, if you enjoyed yourself today and you want to have some more fun with this, then subscribe to the channel, hit the bell icon. That way, you get notified. In fact, bell icon. Where's my bells? I can't do it. I can't use it right now. Well, that's lame. JP says just do it. What do I look like, Nike? Unless you meant the bells, in which case it told me I can't do it right now for some reason. I don't know. So anyway, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell icon. That way you get notified the next time these streams come out. If you know somebody else who might enjoy this, share the stream with them. Or, the stream afterwards, because we're ending it right now. But you get what I mean. Just share the stream out. Otherwise, though, if you had fun today, leave a like on the video, on the stream. Leave comments down below. Join the Discord with us. Because fun times. So join the Discord there, and I will see you next time for whatever it happens to be, I guess. I don't even know what's going to be yet. So whatever it happens to be. And until then, take care.